Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Shine From the Inside's community podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Collington, and today we're going to be talking about the Wheel of the Year, which it's something that I'm going to talk about it as a collective, but also how it can apply personally to our own self-development, but also more how I've applied it for my own self-awareness, because once you understand kind of how the Wheel of the Year works with our life and in itself in Earth's growing cycle, you understand that how it can apply to itself in our own life. And when you understand maybe the season we're in, right, you can understand why maybe your actions are limited in certain seasons. And that's the same kind of thing. Maybe in your own personal life, when you're going through a certain season, you're not going to be in the same mood or energy that you might be in otherwise if you're in a different season. So the best one that I can give for an example at the very beginning is like a winter season. Winter seasons are a lot harder. So a lot of the time, if we're expecting the same actions from ourselves in a winter season as we are in the same summer, it's not going to be the same, right? Like I'm not jumping in the rivers in usually the winter, but in the summer I'm going to. And that's the same with some projects. Even though maybe your project isn't the river, it's the point of a river is a point of like moving forward and about really big energy. And in the winter time, sometimes it's more about hibernation and like getting yourself together before you make those big moves that are coming up in the summer. And so when you understand what season that you're in your life, you are able to navigate it one thing easier, but you're also able to understand and work with yourself easier, because sometimes we feel a lot of shame when we are not in the season that we think that we should be in, or the energy that we think we should be in. And it's not because we're not in it, it's just that that's not our time, that's not our growing season in our life. And the more we can respect and honor these seasons, the more easy it is to deal with them, for one thing. So if you're somebody that has like depression or anxiety or gets really worked up really easily, like some of these seasons, it's a lot easier to understand why they might be harder on you when you get into that cycle, because that's a natural kind of progression of it. So that's what we're going to get into. The Wheel of the Year is pretty much, it goes back pretty far. So one of the first things we're going to talk about is the history of how it got started, its evolution over time, and how it kind of applies to even how I understand it. But then we're going to go over the collective Earth cycles, and then what they mean as a personal cycle for you, how we can use these seasons, the ways to kind of honor the wheel, ways that we can and should honor our own cycles. This is how we can work with it, like I was talking about. And then emotional themes that we can find in each of these. So in different contexts, you'll understand why maybe you might feel a certain way whenever it is your winter season or when it is your summer season compared to other people, because we all feel things slightly differently. And then we'll discuss the finalization of it. But yeah, I'm pretty excited, because this is something that when I understood this as somebody with ADHD who probably has autism, we're going to assume at this point a touch of it, but because it's on a scale, right? But the point is that I definitely have ADHD and always been neurodivergent. And if you look into studies with people who are in that realm, if you are a female especially, right, you oftentimes, depression cycles, anxiety, they are a natural progression because of your brain and the way that your chemistry is working. And so they are natural cycles that you're bound to deal with. And so no matter how good my life always is and how much I can return to that, there are these peak moments where it is very dark and I have to work through it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there was something that felt really terrible about that before I understood it. And it did put me in a different mindset and way of dealing with it than what it is now. And even now, it's still hard. You still have to face it. It's not going to be this easy thing, especially when you are somebody that deals with different levels of this thing. You're always going to be welcoming that darkness, because in essence, what we're going to find, right? Winter is not so much darkness and blackness in a bad way. It's the fertile ground for what prepares our soil for the next year. So by me being okay with dealing with my darkness, facing depression, dealing with anxiety, these things, they become gold. These things are a way that we can move forward, which we'll see in another episode. We'll talk about shadow work, and that's pretty much what happens. And a lot of this darkness that we are afraid of is actually where our best fertilizer and nourishment for our next season, and why we're scared of it is so big and it is so grand, and it's not something we're used to dealing with. And so we have to go into the unknown. And that's usually what the darkness of winter is, right? There's a lot more dark time. You can't really see as much. It's a lot colder. It takes a lot more sturdiness from you. And so anyway, really important, because for me, it helped me understand my cycles. And so then when I realized that I was maybe in a depression cycle, it was always a moment of, oh, this is my rebirth. There's something happening here, and to be gentle with myself right now instead of forcing or being cruel on myself. There's something happening here. So we'll get into it. The point of it is though, it does really help with your self-compassion, but also just self-awareness. Like, what am I best to do right now? How can I best help myself right now? How can I best embrace this cycle right now? And even knowing the different areas and times of the earth itself in these, it can help you also plan your year out if you're maybe not the best at that. So anyway, moving along. All right, so what is the Wheel of the Year? Well, if you were to look at a picture of it, it looks something like this. Pretty much it breaks up into 8 different seasonal transitions marked by festivals and sabbaths, which pretty much are just moments when the sun changes the biggest. So at each time, you have your spring equinoxes, which is usually the halfway points, and then you have the ones that are in between the spring equinoxes. So when your seasons are shifting, so you're shifting from a slightly winter to spring, then full spring, right? And then slightly spring to summer to full summer. Anyways, so what these were is they were created to mark the natural cycles of Earth and the solar events, because of the fact that we have shifting seasons happening and different things come into peak seasons during these times. So some of them are vegetables, some of them are animals, some of them are fish, right? Some of them are going to be berries or flowers, and that's because the different time of when things are growing and at their peak are not always going to be at the same time. So there's been a few models throughout the course of history showing that we care about marking these seasons, right? And some of them have been done on like ice cave markings, some have been done on bone, some have been done like bone, like tusks, but some of them are actually bone tablets. Anyways, point is that we have tracked seasons for a reason and them being important, okay? The model I'm describing, the specific Wheel of the Year, that kind of looks like this. That's going to have all the names that I'm going to talk about and all the energies. This was created by Gerald Gardner. He's the founder of modern Wicca. So already, yes, that might throw some people off, even paganism, because this is getting back to natural cycles of the earth, which a lot of paganism is about. If you go back to more rooting of a lot of religions, a lot of them are going back to natural magic that is the power of the earth. So to me, talking about this, it is not so much about Wiccan or religions in general, like Christianity or anything, paganism. I'm not saying they're not important. I'm just saying that the point of this video goes beyond these labels, and we're getting back just into the essence of the power of these in themselves. Understanding these things helps you understand not only the world but yourself, okay? So but the importance of this is not because I'm trying to preach that you need to believe this. It's just more information that helped me understand myself and the world, right? And you don't have to take it. There's other things that I might say or videos that might pertain to you better. But this is something that helps us understand who we are in a cycle versus a really harsh, like, this is who you are always. As being somebody that has studied quite a lot of psychology and went to school for it, a lot of personality tests, if you take them again and again, sometimes a lot of them will be the same, but a lot of the time you'll see that you actually change day to day and that your answers are not always the same. They're dependent on your mood, right? And that's the same about us. We're not always the exact same person as we might normally be. When we're not in these cycles, we could be completely different people, right? There could be a different personality that's able to transpire when you're not in this specific season that is making you act or feel certain ways. And so it's important sometimes to honor the fact that I'm not trying to say this is the only way. It's just another level of being able to think about it differently as your personal self being something that grows and evolves and is constantly dealing with that cycle of ever-changing life, which if you look at like a snail or butterfly, those changes, there is that one season that is particularly nasty, the gooey stage, and or for the snail, right, the really tight unbearable pain of being able to stay in a shell that doesn't fit for you anymore and you having to leave it, right? There's this really hard sacrifice time that comes up, and that is the winters, right? And so for me, when we talk about this, Ross Nicols also matters because he was part of creating a lot of this, the solar holidays. This was created to merge 4 Celtic fire festivals with 4 Germanic solar festivals to make for a celebration roughly every 6 weeks. So sabbaths happen every 6 weeks. Main importance was to ground modern paganism and Wiccans to a more structured calendar, highlighting specific detailed intentions that are most active naturally through our earth cycle. So this is for you to plant seeds that are most likely going to grow in that kind of time period. So when they were teaching Wiccans and whatnot, with magic, part of what happens with magic is you are taking what you want to change in your life, what you want to see grow, and you're planting seeds for it, and then you're tending to that growth. So no matter what, everything is kind of a growth cycle. And in life, we are growing as well. Change, largely, my favorite metaphors for life coaching often are to do with nature because we are from nature. So I take this in a very roundabout perspective because of the fact that I do understand the magical realm, I understand the spiritual, but I also understand the physicality and the mental aspect of it. So this is not just something that I'm teaching to you because it's just a woo-woo thing. This is genuinely about what the earth is also amplifying behind at that time. So if you are working against what the earth is giving you and also what your own life cycle is giving you, you are doubly halting your process, right? And so if we know how to work with these, we attune to them, we can grow quite fast, very rapid, okay? And you can get through some of your personal cycles a lot quicker than if you tried to delay them. So the point is, more recently, it's used as a grounding plus environmental connection as a way to combat a nature deficit, since much of our life now is obviously indoors. And so it can be used and serve as a reminder to get out and to stay in touch with nature and to observe the seasonal changes that are often overlooked, but also to really embrace them, to be a part of them, to live your life in the same fashion of the way that the earth is changing. Like I was saying, not trying to jump into the river when it's winter time, but honoring the fact of what the river looks like at that time and knowing that it might be best for you not to go in. If you have really an underdeveloped root chakra, the worst thing that you can be doing is going into cold plunges and doing cold activities and sitting on cold stuff, because your root chakra is actually, think of your root chakra as the seed, the most optimal little tiny seed. Seeds don't germinate in ice cold like that. They germinate in warmth. So you want it to be able to open up and grow. And the best way that you can do that is by not overdoing it. So yeah, sometimes what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to really just observe, but the point of this was mainly to get people back into touch with it. And especially as we've evolved now, it's a reminder that we are still part of nature, that no matter how busy life gets, these seasons still affect us, right? And in the wintertime, we are not treated like, oh, it's time to slow down, which is part of why we get burnt out, right? We don't ever get that actual natural cycle to slow down in the harshest conditions that we get presented. We are just told to keep going like nothing matters, right? And yet it does. We feel it in the winter. That's why by the end of the winter, we are in rough shape usually. Most people suffer from some kind of lack of sunshine and rest, okay? But they also created this as a way to be used as a tool of reflection. So mental, emotional, it's like an unburdening, as each season or part of the wheel comes with its own metaphor for human life. Like the cycle, birth, growth, death, and rebirth, and allowing or even forcing us sometimes to make for regular intervals of inner reflection, aka doing our inner work, which is what the shadow phase or winter time is no matter what, we can never stop a winter cycle. All we can do is get ready for it and prepare and make the best of it. So when we like try to stay away from that, that's when you're going to find a lot of the time you have the hardest time in life, is because you have to let it go, like have to have this surrendering and have to face some stuff. And sometimes the prolonging it, the running away from it, the trying to shield yourself from looking at it is going to be when you're going to get the most I want to say friction in your life, stuff coming up, stuff being like much harder for you to deal with, your emotions being a little bit more out of whack. And that's just because it is generally a tougher time, right? to be dealing with it. So, yeah. Okay, so now that we understand a little bit about it, right, about what it is and how we can maybe apply it, we're definitely going to go over more of that. But really, right now, we're going to go over just the Earth's collective cycles in themselves. So first of all, when we look at the Wheel of the Year, right, this is where we start usually, but it's not though. This is where society usually starts, is in the winter. We're going to start in the winter too, because it is technically the next part of the light and dark season, which we'll get into. But you'll see when talking about this why the new year technically doesn't start for us in January usually, like they try to make us believe, and why most people are not ready to have big actions in January, okay? So the first year we have this part, which is what they call the waxing. Waxing is a building up of something, okay? And so the waxing, you're building up the light. So the light is going from dark to its brightest. And then you have the second part of the year, which is your waning, okay? And this is when the light is starting to fade and go back to the darkness again, all right? So pretty much my own personal relationship with this, seeing as we are a part of nature, is that we also have our own personal timings to be in different seasons on top of what the collective season is. So we're going to go over this and show it what it can mean, right? I'm going to describe that, but for the beginning of it, we're going to talk about Yule. So Yule is what people might know the most common of Sabbaths, other than like the spring or summer equinox or autumn equinox, because those ones are obviously common as they're a solar event, right? But anyway, point being, Yule is important. It's around the winter time. It's called the winter solstice. It happens December 21st, 22nd-ish area. And it's classified as the womb. And I'm beginning here because this is usually where people do not want to go the most in their own personal cycles. But also, a lot of people don't like winter. Some do. I'm somebody that not a big fan. I moved away to be on the island to be warmer, right? So this is when nature is dormant. You pull your energy into the soil. So everything that I talk about, think of it in earth, but also into yourself. So you're pulling all of your energy back into yourself in your winter cycle, right? Just like the trees and any kind of plants that are growing back, at that time, they're not worrying about blossoming or flowering. They're letting a lot of their stuff die off. And then they just work on their root system to be even more grounded and to be a bigger, stable, and more usually abundant plant the next year, okay? The cycle meaning for this one is that the sun is being reborn from its longest night, okay? And so the metaphor here is it's the birth of a vision in total darkness. So if this was us manifesting, this is sudden inspiration into what should be birthed. Not so much it needing to be birthed right now. When we think about a baby, right, it stays in the womb for a while. So in the wintertime, it's about suddenly having that kind of fertilizing of a seed or a plant or something like that, but in essence it's that spark of ignition for inspiration and thought. And so it is when this vision gets to be thought of the most, because sometimes the easiest that you can do to vision something or use your imagination sometimes is in the dark, when you can really let things kind of be seen in by your third eye. But a lot of the time when we're working in the darkness, that is the area of limitless possibilities. So at the same time of working in total darkness, you are not alone whatsoever. There is so much in that area. It's vastly filled with stuff. So you can quite find a different version of whatever you want out there, right? But if we were going to apply this in our own life, right, as this is our own personal season now, what this can mean is you may be feeling at your rock bottom here, okay, because everything technically dies off at this time, right? So think of how the winter is cold, harsh, not much is growing, it's all dead. So you may have a lot of grief or feel like you're waiting a lot. You may feel like you're at a dead end. You've used all your resources, tapped out. Like now is not the time to rush usually in this or force ahead because the ground is froze, right? And so now is the time to make the plan, to plan the plan, to look what you could be doing next. What do you want to grow next? How much time is it going to take? What do I need to discover in order to have that happen? Planting the seed in the womb is only about the start of deciding what you want to grow. It's not a time of you needing to do so, but to become what it is that needs to be happening for that to flourish, right? And so if you want to be, I don't know, if you want to run a marathon, in the wintertime, if you decide that, then the seed that's going to be planted is not going to be, we're going to get out and run a marathon tomorrow, which some people might. But normally the logical step is to be like, what do I need to do to be okay to run a marathon? Well, I need to train. Okay, well now what does a training look like for this that I feel like would work best? And that's what you would be planning out, is that first plan of the plan. Okay, and so it's the mulling over an idea or the healing of the soul before it's ready to be seen. So if you've also had a really hard year and you're still really decompressing, this is a time to integrate a lot of that wisdom so that the new year you go into, you're going to be like, I know how to deal with this now, versus if you don't take the time, you run right back into the same kind of issues, okay? So the next phase is going to be our step in between the winter solstice, which is technically Yule, and then before spring. So this is where we called Imbolc. This is on February 1st, okay? It's the midway between winter and spring equinox. It's the slow waking up. Seeds are still germinating. So even though you planted your seed, it's still growing, because maybe you can't enforce your entire plan, but you can start taking some steps. But you're also now learning, oh, this is maybe what I need to do instead. This maybe will help me even more. And so you're, again, adapting even more to what would be the most beneficial for you, okay? And so this is, again, thought of as a spark. So if we still want seeds to grow and you've now noticed even more seeds you want to plant, we need warmth. So what seeds do we want to start, again, planting even more to help even more ignite the plan in action? And so as things start to move up, our actions are going to start to grow, and we're moving from thought to action. Courage is now starting to become a little bit more bolder. And this is when our spirit starts to stretch and we awaken as the winter kind of ends. And so this is when we ourselves are starting with Earth. We're starting to want to be outside more. We're starting to want to do more because we know it's a little bit not as cold anymore. And we've also been in the winter season for a while, so we're just really wanting that new energy of sunlight. So if you are looking at this one as a metaphor, right, this one would be the moment a dream becomes a plan. So in the other one, instead of it just becoming a vision of maybe what you wanted, now it is a plan. This dream that you created in that vision now is turned into a complete plan that you know what you're going to do the moment that you get to do it. And so if you were to apply this in your own cycle, if you were in one of these cycles of Imbolc as a personal cycle, this would be your time to purify. Okay, this would be, you're going to be cleaning, moving around a lot, organizing, editing new ideas, getting rid of a lot of old habits, making room in life for new goals or just things in itself, putting in more nurturing to a project, protecting it from harm. You may be thinking of leaving your job at this point, moving, trying new skills. You may be excited but also feel fragile. Like, this is a really big state of vulnerability, because a seed in its earlier stages, if you planted something already, this is when they're little itty bitty, right? The seed. And so at that point, it's the most fragile because it could get the most damage. All it takes is just to, like, in between your fingers, you can crunch that thing. So you really have to be gentle with holding them or even just touching them in general. And you just want to really be in that safe container, letting it grow enough that you can even do anything with it at all. Okay. The next one is spring equinox, all right? And this is when we are going to start seeing that this should be our new year, like our actual year of when we should be fulfilling intentions now. So if you did start or wish for New Year's resolutions, now would be the time that you should start seeing yourself really go towards them, okay? Not just saying you want to, but actually seeing it happen. So yeah, spring equinox, March 19th to 21st, usually around somewhere in there. And it's called Ostra. It's about new beginnings, new life stirring, trials and initiations, rebirth and planting. So this is when things are warming up. It marks the official start to spring. All plants that are reborn, even leaves on trees, are going to start to flourish at this time. When seedlings start breaking through the soil, your first blossoms start. Now is about balancing potential. Like if you can plant 100 seeds, it's not about how many you can plant, it's about how many you can maintain. It's a cycle of rapid fresh growth, since day and night are equal at this time. And so you have equal energy going into it. So it's about equaling things out a lot of the time. Like you don't want to become burnt out in a spring equinox. You have a long growing season still ahead of you. So it's about really being able to have the fortitude to go the whole growing season and seeing things to their optimal potential. And so at this point, a metaphor for this one is a time of initiation. You're breaking through the soil of your own comfort zone. This is when, if you were thinking about leaving the job, by the time you've hit the spring equinox, you are leaving the job. You now already have the next plan happening, okay? So, personal application, it's time to take action, obviously. You may feel the need to move to do all that you've been thinking of. Have momentum towards all the new now. As you move beyond just planting the plant, and now you have planted it and are actively growing those seeds by doing the actions aligned with the outcome you want to see. Now you may have a ton of courage to be okay and to be new at something, right? So you are doing new jobs, building new habits, bonds, friendships, hobbies, multiple fresh lifestyle changes, more enthusiasm. Even though it still is fragile because it's still a little plant, there's now a lot more stability to it. And so you're still requiring a lot of support and nurturing to these things and protection, but at the same time, not as fragile to being hurt, because now you establish a bit more stability to it that it can withstand some knocks to it. So even if you that's trying something new, right? Even if something doesn't work out, it's not, oh, I'm done with that forever. It's just maybe this test wasn't for me, or maybe I need to try again. You're more durable, flexible kind of thing at this point, rather than being just a little seed that could be bashed real quick. So Beltane is the next one. This is the midway point between the summer and the spring. And so this is going to be on May 1st. And this is when nature's in full bloom. This is everything bursting open, right, full of potential. Sun is around longer. We have more growth, more illumination. This is a joyful time to celebrate the fertility of all life, to grow and cultivate more abundance in life for pleasure, joy, and creativity. The metaphor for this one would be now is a time for sacred union, to merge all your talents with your efforts. All right, and so personal application, if you were in this as your personal year, what this would mean is that, or not personal year, but personal season at this time in your phase of your life, you might be filled with a lot of passion and creativity, fully committed now to work, like a honeymoon phase, and with all you're doing, but giving high energy, falling in love with your own life, your own work and its own potential, all your seeds. This is the flowering of passion. The union is here, one that pairs with your desires and discipline. Okay, the building of support to help and aid intentions and goals in life, to ensure you can give you what you need to grow and to actually see it to fruition. You may be living more outwardly now, more solid, finding it easy to get stuff done and seeing your own power and capabilities. So it's really nice when you get into that kind of phase, because like I said, the earlier winter phases are a little bit harder, okay? So in the change cycle, when you're already in a spring or a summer, you are already knee deep of results and good stuff and these changes you want to see. When you get into fall, winter, and early spring, it's a little bit difficult because you are in those more tendering, nurturing kind of ones, okay? So all right, so our next one is the summer solstice, okay? This is what they call Litha, and it's usually from June 20th to June 22nd, somewhere in there. Although summer now, it's actually the entering of the dark halfway. So this is when we now have hit the halfway point and we're starting the waning part of the year. So even though summer solstice is amazing, we're not there yet, but we're getting close, right? It's in 10 days pretty much. I'm in the beginning of June. It's June 10th today. And so even though it's an exciting time because there is so much sun and everything is flourishing, it's also a reminder that this year, this growing season, it's halfway over. We're already going back to the dark, and so in a way, it's nice because for people who get caught up in the seasons, you can forget how quick this time goes by. and why it's important to make the most of each summer day we get, or a nice day we get, or a time that we get before we go back in the winter seasons, because they are coming, right? And so sad but true that we're already in summer solstice area. But yeah, we're now in the dark halfway of the year. So although it's a growth season, we are starting to want to have things set up with good roots. So as the year progresses, we stop having to do as much hard work. Things can work more for themselves at this point. This is the longest day and the shortest night. After the nights, they grow shorter and they start to get smaller. So we have less time to do stuff in, which is why a lot of the time you want to have everything set up so you don't have to micromanage it, because you don't have the time to anymore, right? But this is when the sun is at its peak, the highest power it can have to help benefit us before the light fades. And so maximum growth and abundance now, all this blossom and all the fruit may start as productivity is rewards, and rewards come out. The metaphor is this season is a call to be visible, to realize your power, and to activate the enjoyments of the fruit of your labor. Now is a season to shine your light and to take full responsibility of your power. Summer solstice is probably a lot of people's favorite, I would say. It is really intense energy at that time because we do have so much sun energy. So I love a good summer season. It's like my favorite to be in because it is the fun one. It is the one that I enjoy, but it is also the one that I probably might get the most burnt out in because I'm going to be doing the most. It's the one that I may avoid some of my own personal needs of like slowing down and resting because I just want to go, you know? But anyway, so personal application is you may be feeling prime of your life. All is going swell. The sun is shining. Your projects are going great without a hitch. Your max productivity output from you is all going optimally. You're doing all the work. You're tackling hard tasks. Stuff wanted to do that for a long time is getting done. Your social connections growing. You're living out loud. You're shining bright. You're owning your own personal reign. Ruling your own destiny. Standing more in your truth. Ruling your kingdom. How you need to be doing so to honor your own royal kingdom, right? Your own, your own place of refuge, how you can rule that, right? And standing more in your own truth, how you need so that you can enjoy the spotlight more. And so it's amazing because this is one of the ones, like, this is what we do the work for, is to experience this. When you go through the darker seasons, you get through this because you know this is it possible. And that summer lasts a lot longer than the winter, right? We have the spring, the summer, and the fall to still enjoy with warm weather, usually warmer weather. It's really only one season that is the hardest, especially if you don't embrace it. But I have a note here that's like, everyone loves a spring or a summer. That's why I do want to show the difference of these, is because it's really nice to enjoy these. Like, we like growing, we like changing, we like to feel like this happy energy, right? And so it's more the other seasons that you can understand why, if you're in one of them, why life feels a little bit more difficult. Okay, so now we move in the next one, which is Lammas, which is midway point again, so August 1st. Here we're getting midway to fall, like autumn equinoxes at this point, and so your days are shorter but still very hot. Lots of work is happening still, but you're seeing a lot of results. You're slowly getting rid of some crops, so some things, they're come and gone, their harvest is over with. You're starting to move along from them. This is seen as the first harvest. The grain is now cut. You're slowly aware summer is coming to a close. You're completing and starting to wrap up some goals here. Metaphor is a time of gratitude, right? This is a time of assessing and seeing all your hard work, where it worked or where it didn't. So this is where you're still in this. You can still tweak some of your energy before the season's over, but this is a lot of when you're cutting the first harvest is, I'm grateful that this is the bounty I got, and like, I'm going to take away these lessons so the next year I can have a better bounty. So if you aren't spending time to see that either, right, it's hard for you to know what you want to grow and take forward with you into your next growing season. And so you're recognizing all of your skills and acknowledging what you actually achieved as you give up the bloom now to get the fruit. So a lot of this you have to sacrifice, right? Like, a lot of the hard time is having to know when to pluck your stuff and making that call, because if you pluck it too soon, some things are never going to get ripe. Some things that if you wait too long, they'll get overripe and you won't even get to enjoy it. So you have to sometimes give up it in order to enjoy it, right? And so This is a time of assessment in your personal application. If you were to be in this kind of season, you're realizing a lot of what parts of your dream worked and what didn't. You're cutting out the grains. You're taking your win and accepting the effort it took to get. What needs sacrifice as it won't make the cut. And doing first, reaping to gain rewards, but also cutting away all that no longer is worth giving energy to. So at this point, a big part of growing cycle, if you are manifesting or doing anything like that, a big thing to think about, it's not just planting seeds. If you're doing a garden, you have to tend to it. Weeds grow in there, and weeds a lot of the time, some of them, they're okay. Some of them, weeds are purposefully growing to infiltrate your good seeds so that they can steal the energy from them. And sometimes you plant seeds thinking they'll be really great and aligned for you, and you'll realize that they did not produce any results, weren't even worth the harvest, you didn't even like them, actually bad for you in the long run. So you're like, you know what, I'm not planting that again. And if it's a weed, I need to cut that out. It's overgrowing all of the things that I actually want to give space to in my garden. And so a big part of Lammas kind of cycle of this energy right now in fall is going to be that surrendering what actually isn't aligned and getting rid of it and clearing it out, because whether or not you want to give energy to it, if it's growing in your garden, you're giving energy to it. And so you want to remove anything that you absolutely do not want to pour into, and then you can maximize on the productivity that's left for the stuff that you do still want to grow in this season. And so you're still, at this phase, you would still be pretty social, like you'd be a social butterfly still. But you'd also be giving in and refining to what serves you the most. So you might not be as available for people as you might be paying attention more to what your needs are at that time, okay? So as we move along with the autumn equinox, which is September 22nd to September 24th kind of area, and it's a time of harvest, hopes, fears. It's called Mabon, but this is the resting after all the hard work. Crops are now being gathered. The leaves are starting to fall to nourish the earth, right? For our next year, this is your second harvest. It's equal day and night before night is longer than day. And so this is your final gathering before winter, but some will gather up until the Sabbath transition. So like all the way until like October. Some will go even further depending on where they live and what the growth season is like for them, right? But the metaphor this time is it's a time of disconcernment. And it's a time to take stock of your stores, because we're about to go into winter, right? So what do you need to get through the winter? To decide what to keep or let go of. It's a mental spring or fall cleaning kind of area. This is when you're mentally going to be scrubbing yourself. You might also do it to your home. But before you head into our deep time of reflection, gathering for your stores what we need for winter and distilling life down into its essentials needed to focus on. So if you're going into your winter season and you're losing a lot of energy, say you're depressed, like this is when you're going to start focusing only on what really matters to you, and why you're going to notice a big change in energy for you compared to if you were in a summer. It's because summer you are very social, you are very outgoing, you are very extroverted. The more we get to the winter, it starts becoming an internal thing, right? We start to go inward. And so you're going to start to gear down. And so your energy is going to be more, I need time to focus on me. And like I said, we can go through these cycles pretty quickly. So just because you were in a winter cycle yesterday doesn't mean you can't be in a spring today, you know? It's the same. Just because you were in a summer the other day can't mean that you're already hitting winter now. And that's why it's good to know, because when you know that you could be ranging through these cycles pretty quickly, depending on how fast you're dealing with stuff, it's not a thing to be mean at yourself, because that means the faster you get through these cycles, technically the faster you are growing, right? The faster you go through a winter, the faster you go to a summer. So anyway, the point is that at this point, this is when you would be starting the gear down process, because the growing season is ending, right? And so at the personal application, you have a lot of gratitude usually at this point, like you're recognizing some stuff for your harvest, but also for your bounty. So you're setting up boundaries maybe to maintain or keep moderation. So at this point, you might need to start being like, yeah, I need to start relaxing a bit. I need to start giving myself some TLC. I need to stop helping my one friend mow because it's hurting my back too much. You know, you might just start noticing that you need to start caring about yourself a bit more here. And this is to help you stay in balance for all that's needed for in your future, so that you're staying nourished throughout this. And it's a season of deciding what is baggage and what is gold. All right. So what we'll carry into the dark and what we will say no to protect our energy internally. It's keeping the grain and which is your wisdom, but then discarding the shaft. So like if you think of a thing of wheat, you're keeping the top of that and you're getting rid of its end, which is the ego or old habits or any like discarding things that really aren't going to be beneficial for you, right? And so it's time to end the seasons, and you know you need to cut it out and letting go what's dead or dying. And so it could be procrastinating a lot at this point. All right, so the final one, which is Samhain, which is New Year. This is going to be when the wheel is going to reset after this, okay? And so in the autumn equinox, it's kind of preparing for that. And so usually if you know you're about to say goodbye to something, right? And so if you were leaving a job or that was kind of something that you were considering, at this point you may be grateful for everything you learned there. You know, if there was a change happening that is finally taking place in your life, you might be really grateful for everything that it taught you. Same with if you were a gardener. In the autumn equinox, you're going to have a lot of gratitude for the harvest that you got. In Samhain, why? It happens on October 31st, and so it's the witch's new year. Everything resets after this, and so it's a time of remembering everything that the year brought you. It's a time of going through. It's a big time of integration. This can be... Fall is one of the ones that I noticed that I started avoiding the most when I started looking into seasonal work, because I knew that if fall was coming, winter was coming next. And fall for me is harder than winter. Once I'm already in winter, there's not much I can do about it. But fall you have to make this decision to kind of surrender. And like with my garden, it's hard sometimes to make the cut to say I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff and to know that its season is over, because maybe it could grow more. You know, maybe something else might need it in the wintertime. And for me to have to make that call sometimes to cut things out is really difficult for me. So I've gotten to a place in my life where before I cut things out, I definitively know it is the best thing to do, and there's no reason to not, because whatever is going to be left behind is actually going to be worse for me to deal with in the long run if I keep it there and allow it to kind of fester. So some things, they are beneficial, like the leaves going on the ground, they help nourish the ground. Some stuff, the longer I leave it out there, it's not going to help the soil, it's not going to help me, it's just going to mold, it's just going to get gross, and I'm going to have to deal with it in the moldy state, and it's just going to be, the only difference is going to be it's moldy versus it wasn't before, and so I'd rather deal with it before it gets there. So the Samhain can be when it starts to feel kind of difficult for emotions, to really heavy emotions, and it's Samhain specifically is a really big time to connect with ancestors. That's why the veil is usually thin at that time, because we're starting into the darkness, but a lot of ancestors around that time are coming to visit us. And so a big theme is remembering and honoring what was and what's to come, because a lot of the knowledge and wisdom that we get is from those past generations. And so they are what make us better every time we come out of the darkness, is they help guide us through that darkness and they help bring us to the other side. And so a lot of these new ideas and inspirations, they're ours, but they come from others who tried them before. We pick up on energy and kind of remember things that maybe generations before us already knew were good ideas, and we start utilizing them now. And so the more that we pay honor to this cycle of remembering, the more it sometimes opens up this untapped potential of knowledge that you can really harness and start gaining a lot of insight into, to take into your winter, to really mull over and figure out what you want to do with next season. Because here you are learning, you're seeing what worked and what didn't, and being like, this is what I'm going to honor for next cycle, right? And so this is the end of harvest, and before we go into winter, this is when we honor moving from an active state to a more in dead or liminal kind of space, the internal kind of state. That is winter energy, time of death, magic, mystery. The earth is going dormant. It's time to pay reverence for the new level of darkness, as dark starts to take time more than day takes time. So dark is growing. We're going to have more dark time than we are going to have daylight. And so when we allow this year to die and come to a close, we make space for the new. And so it's the final closing up of soils. It's the preparing that soil for winter to be able to just get sleep and be ready for when it's time to plant seeds into it. And then you're letting also anything that is inside of that soil decay and become fertilizer to make it more abundant and nourish it for next growing season. So it's more ripe with potential, right? So the metaphor here is the sorting out of all old and what you want to keep versus what you want to discard. So you're now the sage or your mentor. You have become now the experienced one, right? And the growth that you know what's aligned and what isn't for you now, you get to make that decision to cut things out versus what you want to keep in there. Things you want to move on from, or what you want to add that might be even better for you. And so if this is your year or season, if this is the season that you're in, sometimes these can last a year. These seasons can last a long time, like especially for people who don't do as much energy work and feel like the winter seasons the way that I do. You might not hit winter as often as I do. I hit winter several times a year, people. So, and that's okay. So you may be feeling a lot of depression, identity loss, and confusion. Like in this point, if this is what phase you're in life, this is when you might be having a death of your ego. And so those are really a hard time. These are nights of the soul, right? These are when you are going to be facing a lot more of your own inner demons and stuff, okay? And so you're going to be facing a lot of old identities. There might be ending of big phases or cycles that are no longer willing to keep repeating, releasing all no longer aligned, and letting parts of self or life die completely. You may be feeling called to do a lot of shadow work therapy, honoring the past while not living in it, connecting with lineage or home or anything more of like your ancestral line. Discovering your roots consist of what they consist of, your inner time, and then focusing on spending time honoring yours or your ancestors' past. And so it's really interesting because when you get into it, you can really understand how some of these cycles can affect you and why they affect us in itself, like how the seasons as they change, they matter, right, to us, because for a reason they are affecting us whether we care to admit it or not. But especially why we can have such a hard time when we are going through some of these other kinds of seasons, because they are not all primed for us to be moving ahead, and we still treat each season that we're in like we are supposed to move ahead. We are moving ahead. That's the funny thing about it. Even in the winter when we are like frozen in place, it's nourishing us and growing us deeper roots wise, and so we actually are still moving. It's just in a different way than what we're used to. And when we can respect that, it's actually a really beautiful thing to know that even when you slow down, you are still growing, and sometimes even more intensely than if you were moving. Because if you're moving constantly with no intention and just like whatever action, it's actually there's no point to it, right? And versus you resting and really integrating the wisdom and then making very deep intention, meaning-filled steps, each one, like, and then you only have to make 4 steps, right? Versus 400 steps that didn't even get you there, right? So sometimes the planning really does help everything else. And so anyways, we're moving on to the importance of understanding these seasons collectively and personally. Collectively, we can see seasons impact people like seasonal depression. So that in itself is a sign that seasons do infect us. Was a good one. But some, although Earth may be in summer, personally are in their winter. And knowing that means naturally they may be feeling things like depressed or anxious, even suicidal is a big thing, right? And so I talk about this as awareness helps us navigate our seasons. And so when we begin the descent darker into the half of a year, we tend to experience heavier, darker, lower emotions. And so Mabon to Samhain, this can be the peak of when we might experience anxiety and dread, because we know in the future we're going to have to deal with something coming up. And anxiety is a very future-focused fear. So a lot of the time, if you are anxious, the best thing you can do is focus on the present moment, first few steps in front of you, and stop thinking too much about the future because you can't control that far away from you, right? You can control these steps in front of you, though. And so we tend to want to watch what's going on in this season, like at this time, if you are experiencing this, or in your own. Like some people, they start dreading the winter coming up. So you might just be feeling this because you know the seasons are shifting just on Earth itself, not a personal way. And so we're starting to watch stuff die, projects ends, relationships shift, your youth might be you feel like it's fading. We're anxious is usually know as death is here, but we don't have relief of it yet. And so it's like the in-between stage of like a change is coming, but yet it's not yet here. And so we have to wait for the fear of the unknown for that. And so we can start panicking. But And then in the winter is when we might make that change. Like we might leave that job. We might start something new. And so we might not always have the plan just yet, right? Because that's where the vision comes in a winter. And so we might just be having the first few steps of what that actually looks like. And that's only going to be, oh, I just need to do this, right? I just need to leave my job right now. I don't know what that looks like on the other side of leaving my job, which is why Maybon to Samhain can be really scary. It's that cut. It's that fall, right? With me and my garden. It's that deciding, is it now time to leave? Yes, it's now time to leave. Oh God, that's scary. What's on the other side of me leaving? And then it's like a whole other world. Once you decide that's the task you're going to do. There's a whole other worry, because before it was the fear of, oh no, what am I going to do? Now it's like, oh, I'm going to do this. Well, what's going to happen because of this? Samhain to Yule is the next part. That is obviously hard, because that is from fall to winter. And this is your deep dark. This is the darkest part of the year. It's usually the peak of depression, ego deaths, because a lot of ego dies in the dark. A lot of people can become suicidal in this phase. Some people are just in general because of a winter phase, but some because of like seasonal depression, or some also just in general if you're going through your own personal winter cycle. The problem with depression is that the ego death, to me, back in the day, I never used to think of it the same way, right? I used to think of it as like, yeah, I was suicidal at the end of my life. A big thing about what it is now is it's actually more about, I just want whatever's going on to stop. There's a phase that can't continue, and I feel that phase ending. And so I feel that wanting to die, not me wanting to die. And so a lot of people, I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but for me personally, I started honoring, because I dated somebody that was extremely depressed, right? And so I dealt with suicide in a way that was different from my own. And it was really intense to deal with. And in a certain way, I realized a part of what our battle is with this. And it is because we're going into the dark, and a large part of what comes into the dark with us cannot come back out. So a large part of what goes into winter with us doesn't come back out of winter. It decays and falls away. And that's a really hard process, like the butterfly, having to let large part of you become goo so the rest of you can be transformed and crystallized into something else. And it is an incredibly difficult task, and not a lot of people can make it through it, especially if it is a big shift and change and you weren't prepared for it and you don't have any tools to get through it. And so that's part of why I wanted to do this so much, is because of the way that the world is going. Like, they're really talking people into like offing themselves. Like, it is like an actual like, yeah, you know, like, and they've made the world depressing. They've made it so that we are depressed throughout, regardless of what season it is or what's going on. There's like this doom feeling over a lot of it, and people don't know how to deal with it, because once it gets in your mind, it seeps into everything. But once we protect the mind and the spirit and your heart, and you start to understand all of this stuff, you do become invincible in a sense. And so even though I still suffer from depression sometimes, a lot of the time I'm like, what is dying within me right now that I need to grieve and I need to say goodbye to, and it hurts. And I'm sad to say goodbye to it, because I'm grateful for every part of me, even the stuff I have to say goodbye to that wasn't the best. I'm grateful for what it brought me and taught me. I would never be here without it. And so it is hard to say goodbye to it, but sometimes I'm like, fuck yeah, goodbye. Don't let the door kick you on the way out. You know, like, some things you're so happy to be relieved of, but at the same time, I'm so grateful to have that experience, to know I'm grateful for it to go. You know, if you don't know about it, you keep it, right? And there's a beauty in finding out and discovering, and there's a sadness in having to let go, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there is something wrong with us not knowing, and then not knowing how to do it, and then getting stuck in these phases, and then losing people because they don't know how to get out of it. And like, I felt alone for a large part of my life, and so dealing with suicide, it was never because like I wanted generally to kill myself. It was because life felt terrible, right? And like, I didn't want to do that anymore. And that I thought it'd just be something that would be easier if I wasn't here to deal with. But the best thing that I think I learned in all of this is that we Well, for one, suicide's never the answer, because whatever, I genuinely believe in us recycling, and so energy recycles. So if you don't finish your life lessons in this life, you come back and you do it again. And I don't want her to have to come back and do it again. I don't want my soul to have to come back and do this again. I'm strong enough to do this. I was here because I was strong enough, and we all are here because we're strong enough. And I believe in us all, and it's just about us knowing that we can. But when you get into a winter cycle and you feel alone and you feel different, and there's a part of you that's dying that doesn't feel welcomed in this world, that knows this world is wrong, it is really hard to stay in and still participate. So I don't want anyone to think that I don't know how hard it is to be in a winter cycle, that I take this lightly, because it is something that I still have to very much honor and be extremely gentle with myself, because there are times when those winter seasons sneak up on me, and all of a sudden I'm in it and I'm like, why am I depressed right now? And something beautiful is always being born out of that, but there is something sad that I have to admit, or something I have to face. And it is like that quote of like, you have to face the dragon to get the gold. And a large time, the dragon's the one that's going to give you the gold, right? The dragon's like, you know what, you faced me, here's a little treat. Like, the dragon isn't your enemy. It's like a tester to see if you're going to face it or not. And after it, usually you don't even need to deal with a lot of what we hype in our brain to deal with, right? So anyway, I'm getting off track here. I can't do that. But anyways, it's essentially a death of the self. It makes us feel horrid because it's a time of mourning, time in between. We're uncomfortable. We may be lost, confused, isolated, feeling frozen or despaired. Like with nature, all of us is being stripped bare, right? That's why it hurts. It's just, you are completely transforming. And so you don't feel like yourself, because technically you're in that liminal space of in between who you were and who you're becoming. So you're not really yourself, right? You're a version of that transmutation of transformation that is slowly becoming something else, even while we are in waking life, which is why it is so crazy that society wants us to just continuously move about like none of this stuff applies to us, because this is all happening whether we pay attention to it or not. So you're not crazy for feeling like it's a lot sometimes, and you're not lazy, and you're not weak, because it's a lot on you sometimes. This is a lot. Even if you were like me or others who have a life that's not as hard and have time to just completely like pay attention to this and give into this and learn and be a part of this, it's still challenging for me, right? So it's actually amazing, because some people, because you haven't had time to slow down, you actually don't know how amazing it is that you do what you do. You don't even know how proud I am for most of you. And it's not because I want you to keep working like that. It's because you do so much and you don't even give yourself credit. And yet you don't even know how truly much you're doing to yourself, because I do know the impact of just a little ounce of half those efforts. And especially energy work. Energy work has magnified any physical intensity you will ever work around. So if you are doing any little bit of that, you deserve so much more than you give yourself recognition for. And so like, winter is very hard because it is leaving us vulnerable. It is leaving us raw. It is ripping us open and taking everything out and being like, this has to go and this is staying. This has to go, this is staying. And that is a terrible process, because at some point in our past, when you ever had somebody like doing that to you, right, there is this like, why can't I keep it all? And sometimes it's like, why can't I get rid of it all? But in the void, it can feel hopeless and pointless. It's too vast. It's too unknown, too overwhelming, which can lead to too many ideals of not coming and dealing with it, not wanting to figure it out, right? And so as the old us is now gone, right? In the wintertime, that is what happens. You become stripped and something else comes out. And so we're changed by our growing seasons, but now we are in the womb to let yourself grow and to become the new us born in the spring. All right. And so we can feel like we are nothing in this space, right? And that's like a lot of the time when you feel depressed, you feel nothing. You feel kind of numb, right? And you're just kind of here existing, but nothing feels kind of real or applicable and doesn't really touch you in the same way. And that's because technically hard for your hobbies to touch you if you're not yourself, you know? And so that's why it's important that even though things don't feel some kind of way, to keep doing those same actions, because eventually you will come out of your winter, and these things help get you out of it quicker, even if they don't feel right? But it's nothing is bad. That's the whole point that I'm trying to get at, is in a winter thing, this is all an invitation. It's all an invitation to what you want to grow next. If you feel this strain, that is a beautiful thing, because that means you are ready to expand. If you feel a very intense ego death, that is a beautiful thing, because your soul then has now trusted you enough to level you up in a way that is so intense, you feel it. And not just a little bit, you feel it in the most intense way. Okay? And so it's crazy, because it's really amazing to understand, because then you'll know when these happen that something big is going on for you, right? We don't just have our own personal winter cycles because nothing is being born out of that vastness. Something great is being born. Otherwise, you would not hit a fall or winter. You would stay in the summer because you are already in that peak. You don't need to change. You're growing already at the optimal. So when you face a winter or a fall, that is a beautiful omen that you are getting better, you are expanding, you are growing, and that is something that we want to see, which is why you don't want to prevent happening into a winter or fall, because you want these things to help evolve you, to elevate you, and without going through them, you're never going to get there. And some people who just stay in those same patterns, that's because they're trying to prevent life cycles. They're trying to stay dormant in a life that is not dormant like that, right? And so anyway, it's not just our dark transitions that can cause us to like produce some emotions. Like I was saying, if you are overwhelmed in a summer cycle, like you can become burnt out and stuff like that, right? And so in the ascent to Imbolc or Litha, what can happen is we can feel more frantic. And so like Imbolc to Astra, you're struggling as you feel inadequate or frustrated, newly born baby kind of vibe. So like you want to do everything, but you don't know how. And so you can feel really upset about stuff. And so even though you're in a spring kind of energy, you're still dealing with a lot of like, this is so uncomfortable, right? And so you have a new self, but it's weak and can only do so much to push through a frozen kind of mud feel. You could feel like imposter syndrome, social anxiety, not enough, exposed, fragile, insecure, overwhelmed. Beltane to Litha is overdrive, peak burnout, manic energy, all growing and moving so fast, can cause us to feel highly stressed. Pressure to bloom perfectly can make one judge self harshly, comparing to other success, obsession, right? And so the start of the descent, the harvest, Lammas could have a lot of feelings of disappointment. Not all grew that you wanted, or less yield than you were wanting, completed fails, loss of fruit, not as sweet as you thought. Could feel a lot of grief, regret, sadness, seeing with only lack, mourning potential that you were envisioning versus the reality of what was. So the main point here is knowing and understanding that understanding these cycles, we can stop fighting them. And we can stop fighting our own natural cycles. And when we have these kind of emotions and tensions rise up, we can be like, oh, this is a sign. This is a clue that I may be in this season, and that this is maybe an action that might help me most going forward now to resolve what I'm feeling here, right? Like if you're in a Beltane kind of area and you feel burnt out, well, then maybe you are pushing too hard to do stuff, and maybe it's time to just enjoy maybe some more of your fruits of your labor right now. Right? And some of us don't do that. Like my man be talking about, he just like did a big sale and like he's like on to the next one. I'm like, yo, congrats on your big sale though. He's like, yeah, we gotta work on, yeah, well, what about congratulating the now, you know? So it's just like at the same time, it's important sometimes that even though you're moving forward, to really take that time, because you don't need to burn out. Because if you are doing the work, you deserve a bit of the time to enjoy this life as well, right? So the main point is knowing and understanding we stop fighting our own natural cycles and working with them, but especially when it comes to fall and winter, when it's less about doing, more about being, and can appreciate the necessary dormancy of the heaviness to change, to feel like a cocoon to nurture us instead of a cage trapping us. So a lot of the time in the winter we can feel very bound down by the weather, and so it's nice to not have that feeling and to see it as more of like a holding container helping you to flourish versus like, oh, I'm stuck here, I can't do anything, you know? And that's the same with the others. It's like, oh man, everybody's changing right now, everyone's growing right now, and I'm not. And it's like, well, you're not like them because you're not supposed to compare yourself to them. If they're blooming like a rose and you're blooming like a tree, a rose blooms in a completely different growth cycle and timing than a tree does. And if you're a fruiting tree, you take even longer, right? And fruit trees, they are bountiful for a very long time, and they can create multiple other trees, you know? And roses, I'm not saying they can't, I'm just saying that they're going to do it in a different way than a tree does. And so comparing yourself does not help in these things. And a lot of the time, that's one of the reasons you want to know your own growth cycles, because just because somebody's in a summer doesn't mean you are. You know, when you have a friend that's in a winter and you're in a summer, it is very drastically different and it's hard. But sometimes you're the sun to help warm them, you know, and sometimes if you're burnt out, they're the cool down that you need. Right? They're going to help sustain you to be like, whoa, I maybe need to go back inward and care about me a bit more. You know? And that's because they're so much in that internal state of mellowed outness. Anyway, so application. How do we use this stuff, right? How do we use collective and personal stuff? So Yule, if your calendar year is in this season, you do something to celebrate the return of the sun. Lighting candles is good for this. You can eat light and happy foods, oranges, spend time with small groups, those that warm you, and rest lots. That is if it's winter, genuinely winter in Earth, okay? You can look into sabbaths. Each Sabbath will have a lot of different things, activities, foods, colors, sounds, animals, all different kinds of things, activities, even yoga poses, like lots of different ones. Sabbaths all have different things that if you really want to get into them and celebrate that time of the year, you can really look into that. If you are in the personal area of this lifetime, so like this is where doesn't matter what time of the year it is in the calendar year, in your own personal life cycle, if you are in a winter or Yule one, this is a time, this is the activities you'd want to do, okay? So radical stillness. Personal season is key to not force yourself to plan or to do, all right? Right now, your key is to focus on to survive the night of the souls. You work on your dreams, seeds, just to get your mind off the lower feels by remembering the dark isn't scary or bad. It's the womb of life, vast possibilities. So now's not the time to be like, oh, I'm in the dark. It's to be like, oh, I'm in the dark. What can I plant here? What can I build in here? Look into the dark and let yourself see what you want to see happen in your future. What you might like, what you might enjoy. Doing so with zero pressure. The idea here isn't to force a vision to be like, this is the action. It's just to fiddle around with different ideas and see what feels the best and what you like the most and be like, that's the one, right? And so this is just no pressure. You just start to invest in them and just ponder, mulling them over, because then when it comes to the next one, right, that's now going to be the dream that you have. It's now not just a vision you're mulling over. This is the specific dream of intention seed I'm going to plant now, right? So in bulk, if this is the calendar time of your year, so the beginning of February area of your year, this is your thaw. So if you want to start preparing energetically for this time of the year to make the most of this energy with the earth, you want to do deep cleaning. Candles again is nice because the light is coming back, right? So candles is always going to be about light. But also igniting the spark to actions. It's also clarity and checking on store levels to see what you need or don't in the upcoming season. So this is again taking that internal revenue. Be like, what am I missing? What am I lacking? What do I need to get in stuff? What do I want to work on this year before a really growing season picks up? What do I need to get in and done? Okay. And so if you're in the personal season of your own year cycle or season cycle of in bulk, what that means is this time of purification for you. So you've now come out of the winter, right? You're now purified. There's still not a time for you to rush because you're still kind of figuring out like a little baby waking up, trying to figure out what your fingers do and everything like that. And so you're still moving on your winter stage and starting with small actions. Easily accomplished. You clean, organize. You can even just do one little area. Little tasks. Delete emails, photos, pictures, whatever. You move items around in your home. A big thing for feng shui is if you want to reset the energy of a place, move at least 20 objects. But take time for self-care, salt baths, wash away your old winter skin kind of thing. Do what it takes to nourish and care for yourself. Crawling out of depression is a little acts before feeling the better, like before feeling the different tone of energy, is you want to do all these little actions that help kind of wake you up. It's not about a big jolt to the system, right? If we put seeds out too early in the cold, they're going to shunt and die. And it's the same for you. If you're a baby just waking up and I toss you into the water, you might drown. You might float, but a large part in the wintertime, you'll freeze to death still. Like the water is still very cold out there. So at some point, there's a certain level of you just can't do that yet. No matter what, there are certain things that it's not time for yet. And it's okay to take your time still because you're still slowly only introducing it. Astra. At this point, this is when things are awakening. And so in the time of the year, if this is when you're waking up, well, not you're waking up, but if this is when your spring is waking up in your area, the best thing you can do is plant your garden, get your soil ready, do anything for personal goals, getting your outdoors more welcoming, kind of like the new energy of the spring. Starting new social or group projects because you're starting to kind of come out of your shell and be more out external. And so then in your personal season for Astra, if you were going through this own growth season, you would want to do micro risks. So things that kind of like excite you, but you're kind of scared of, but not big ones still, because we're still kind of waking up. So you kind of want to build your confidence for the bigger steps you're going to take later in the year. But this is where you're trying new and exciting things to help come out of your shell. You push your comfort zone a bit, say yes to something small that you wouldn't normally. Gardening is very good for us. If you don't have one, you can just go into nature. It's time to revisit and watch slow growth and process but steady. Like in a lot of nature, you want to really honor the fact that you see nature growing slowly but steadily. So take time to visualize your own self and your own seeds being planted and slowly how they need nourishment and time to grow and flourish to their optimal capacity. Allowing things to see them to be rooted very deeply, so that even though deeper roots often take longer for you to see upward growth of a plant, you know that when you get a good plant that it is stable, then it's going to have long-term benefit, not just grew and then was gone before you can harvest anything. And so seeing how fragile growth starts, but then grows stronger with time, and how it's worthy to protect your new growth. It's a really big time when you do start things to be really gentle with yourself and knowing that it's okay for things to take a while to blossom for you, but also that the best thing you can do is nourish them so that they can even grow. Beltane is right before we're going to hit that spring equinox, right? So things are kicking up a lot. And so in wherever your season of earth is for before summer, right, you're going to have a quickening, big burst of energy. Lots of community gatherings is good here. Bonfires, festivals, dancing, celebrating health, sexuality, anything to do with abundance or fertility is really good here. If you're in your own personal season for this, it's really good for playtime, like really high energy on beautiful things, even useless, like art, outside nature, creating stuff, doing more movements physically or take action steps, gym, dancing, getting your body, yoga, stretching, help ground yourself through the seasons. The more that you are doing in a certain sense, like goal-wise, if it's a lot of sitting here or if it's a lot of talking and stuff, it's nice to do the opposite activities. And so if you have to be serious a lot, it's even more important to introduce playtime a lot more for yourself. If you have to do a lot of sitting, it's really important to get a lot more movement out. So yeah, anyways, moving along. Litha, this is now summer solstice, and so this is your peak time. It's time for sunbathing, picnics, staying up late, being highly visible socially, so really getting out there, doing any kind of goals that you have that are particularly aligned with being out in the public and talking or socializing in itself. In your own personal season, if you're in this, things that you might want to do is self-celebration. It's a really good time to really honor yourself. Own who you are and how you're winning all that you are. No minimizing your success. This is solar journaling. So write down all you're proud of. Solar is really sun energy of confidence, of how you like are proud of yourself and back yourself, you know. And so soaking up all the sunlight are your achievements and the gold to stock for the deeper months, or darker months. So part of the reason that we go through this in the summer and why this is potent is because summer is when it starts to dwindle, right? The light. And so when we get into these dark nights of the soul, or the winter or the fall kind of months, whenever you go through those, some of the things that'll get you through the most is remembering your strengths and who you actually are. A lot of the time when the dark talks to us, if it's the demons talking to us in there, or lower entity forces, or even our own self, like critical talk, a lot of those things are talking to us in ways that are trying to deter us and to confuse us on our actual truth. And part of that is to keep us stuck. If you don't see the truth of who you are, it's really easy to get swindled and caught and stuck in the tar of the darkness. Versus if you know who you are, you kind of are like Jesus. You walk on that water, right? You walk on that tar, nothing sticks to you. You're able to just walk right through it. You know how to get through there. And a big part of that is having self-awareness. A big part of that is knowing who you are. And so the more that you honor and know who you are in the sun, the more you'll be prepared when you go through the dark to like glow in the dark. And you won't have to worry about being part of the darkness because you're part of the light and you're just going through the darkness, right? So anyways, then we have Lammas. Lammas is the culling, the baking of bread, harvesting, community markets, preserving things from crops. So this is a big time that if you're in that season of the year, you're going to be making the most of your abundance of all of the work that you've been doing all year kind of thing. If it's your own personal season of what you're going through in your own life, this might be where you assess all of your harvest, and when you're feeling lack, you look at all of your value that you have in there and your life's value, what actually harvested. You're taking time to refine your energy, your investments, seeing what's taking too much and you cut it out. You're removing all to burn out, but removing all so that you don't burn out by not producing enough, or it took too much for too little kind of thing, and you're being unable to save and do everything. So this is a time where you honestly are being very brutal with yourself and being like, I can't continue this anymore kind of stuff. And so those are big things too. If you want to honor the energy of being in that cycle, it's a big time to be like, what can I not keep giving energy into? What is literally eating my garden for no reason, right? It's not nourishing me, and it's not giving me any yield. So why do I keep letting it grow here? And so Mabon is the release. It's the harvest dinners, feast, gratitude list, preparing home, land, body for winter. So if you were going to celebrate the seasonals, those are some of the things you would do for that. If you were in your own personal season of that, this is where you would be setting boundaries. After years of experience, it's a good time to work with how to better support yourself and keep yourself balanced. It's a good time to start saying no to all that is draining you or is too much to handle now. This is a really good time to declutter mental space and make a list of all the stuff you're leaving behind. You can even burn this list and put it in your soil that you've now prepared to fertilize it for the next year, and make sure that you're laying all this stuff to rest fully as well, right? You're closing it out so it's not coming in the new year with you. But preparing you for what may arise in the darker months, so it's less of a surprise. The more work that you do in the fall, the more that you're going to see what's going to maybe come up in the winter. And so, again, it's not going to surprise you if you know it's coming. If you're not doing the work and you're not doing any inner reflection, sometimes that can be the most jolting dark nights of the soul, because they come out of nowhere and they come really violently. And by violently, I mean just like you're not prepared for what it's going to say. And so you're like, ah! And so it's that much more of a shock and a hit to the ego for you to really comprehend. And so it might take you a lot longer to get through that winter phase, because a big part of that, you're going to have to go through all the stages of grief. And a big part of the first few stages is like denial, right? Like, no. So you're not really going to get the message until a little bit later. And then we have Samhain, which is the thinning of the veil. And so a good thing to do at this time of the year for the actual Earth cycle is honoring ancestors, visiting graveyards, telling stories of the past loved ones, recalling your year or past selves, anything to do with looking into the past and honoring it. This is a good time to even cook familial recipes or stuff that you've known, get into touch with old hobbies or crafts that maybe your family or your culture is a part of, anything like that. If you're in your personal time season of Samhain. This is like optimal time for shadow work. This is the best time which I will have a video in 2 more videos. I'm doing a shadow work video. And so this is when you let yourself feel the darkness. This is when you come and treat it as a guest. So if you feel depressed, depression is a gift. It's trying to tell you something. And the more you invite it in and be like, what's going on? I'm here for you. What do you need from me? The more that your guest is going to leave happily and doesn't need to stay as long because you immediately let it open up to you, right? And so let your depression or the darkness kind of live with you. Prevents us from making it harder on ourselves. Welcoming it comes and goes. So you can write a letter to yourself that's dying. So if you are doing shadow work, a big part of shadow work is like acknowledging what's in the shadow, what's in the darkness. And part of what's in the darkness is the stuff that we are not necessarily want to keep, and some of the stuff that we don't even know that we have. Like a lot of our potential is in there, but also a lot of our demons are in there, right? And so when we don't do the shadow work, the shadows control us, the demons control us, the trauma controls us, the patterns control us, because we are then largely unconscious. And so the biggest thing that we can do for ourselves is to do the shadow work so that we become conscious, which is becoming that light, right? Becoming like Jesus walking on the tar instead of getting stuck in that tar. You can walk through the darkness because you are aware. And so part of when you welcome it, you know it. It's your friend. You've had conversations with it. So when it arrives, you're like, oh, this is familiar. I know how to work with you. And when you write a letter, part of what you do is writing is a really big, powerful tool with the shadow because you're becoming tangible. Something in the shadow is usually dark and unknown. And you're pulling it out and making it a real tangible thing that you can read. And so writing a letter to anything, you can write a letter to anybody you want to say goodbye to, any past versions of yourself. But one of the strongest you can do, especially around Samhain, is to write a letter to yourself that's dying. And that's the part of the ego that you're saying goodbye to, or the parts of your habits, or the parts of an old way of being that no longer come forward with you, not because you don't like it, just because you've evolved. It's time to grow. I've learned from you. It's time to say goodbye. And I really appreciate you because you're part of that ancestry of my knowledge. And I honor you because without those terrible experiences, sometimes I would not become the magnificent being I am, right? Sometimes if I wasn't put in my place at some point to be like, don't be that terrible of a person, then I might still be a terrible person. I'm not saying I was ever terrible like some people out there. I'm just saying the whole point is like, when you write a letter to yourself that's dying, you acknowledge it's dying. You make something tangible that this is coming to a close and I acknowledge this is happening. So in the wintertime, you might feel that self, whatever you wrote in that letter that's dying, you may feel that slowly changing and shifting for you. And it might be uncomfortable again because you're in that womb of change. But you're not going to be surprised because you wrote a letter, you know exactly what's shifting in you. You paid attention, you know what's going to change, and now you get to watch it change. Versus if you don't write the letter, you don't acknowledge what's changed, you don't look at your year ahead, you don't look at the year behind you, you're not looking at anything, you're not learning any of the lessons, then yeah, you're going to be surprised when things come up because like, oh, how did I know? Well, you would have known if you listened to all the many signs you were given. But we're not trying to shame people. I'm just saying, when you face these ghosts, when you face your past selves, you're not surprised with what you incur. That's why when people say anything or judge you or whatever, it doesn't really matter because you know you, right? And that's why when the darkness speaks to you and the demons speak to you, or like lower entities or things try to get to you and control you and speak to you, they don't control you. Nothing can control you but you at that point because you know you, right? And so the more that you thank those versions that they were and how they protected and guided you for what they knew at the time, and then let them go because you now are like, you did such a good job, I don't need you anymore, the quicker they go too, because a large part is we need to acknowledge and bring it to light and know that we held on and used those things as a reason. Like it benefited us to use those tools for a while. And now guess what? It doesn't benefit. It hurts. It's no longer aligned at all to the point where I can't use it anymore. So I have to let it go. And so this, if you honor it enough, this transition becomes so sacred to you. And so it now is no longer a depression when you hit this deep cycle of darkness. It's now a transition. You now know you're being rebirthed. Even though there's a death in there and it feels terrible and you may feel depressed, it is depressing. it is depressing to go through a death. I'm not going to sit here and make it like it's going to be easy to ever do that. I'm just trying to give you the tools so that it is easier to deal with while it's difficult, right? And so, anyway, part of what we want to remember is that the facing the darkness is always going to be dark, but there is a very big, beautiful part to it. The more that we see its true identity, and a lot of us have seen it as a punishment. And when you see it that way, it is scary to go in the dark because you're like, what am I being punished for now? And you already had a whole year of stuff happen, right? And so it's like, I've already had a whole lifetime and year of things. I don't really want to go in the dark and deal with more. I just dealt with stuff. But when we actually see it, we're like, oh, I'm going into the dark because I'm being elevated. I'm going into the dark because I'm being initiated. And when I complete my initiation, I won't be the same because I learned and I grew through all of this. And now when I pop back out in the spring, I'm going to be a highly evolved version of the plant that I was before I went into the winter. And so it's important to honor these cycles because we, at any time, don't know which one we're in, really. Some of these things will help you know which one you might be in. But it's sometimes, like I said, they surprise me. They go very fast. And so one day you might wake up in spring and then next day you're in a winter because you did so much and went through things. I'm not saying to get caught up in those. The whole point of bringing this up was the main point of knowing that if you're in a winter season of your own life and feeling depressed, it is okay. You will get through it because that's the part of a growing season is they only last so long. You can't stay in it forever. So the darkness can't stay around forever. Eventually we'll have to find the light, and there is a reason you're going through it, even though it seems bleak at sometimes. There is a reason you're going through it, and you genuinely are going to be better the more that you honor that transition, because there is something that is going to change you profoundly, that you will not be the same, which is why it is so uncomfortable in that process, because you go into the darkness being initiated and you come out being something else, and there's something that has to happen in between, right? So if you wanted to honor the Sabbath, if you wanted to be somebody that cared about the wheel of the year in the way of like paganism, Wiccan, or just for me as a believer of honoring the seasons of change for the cycles, because I love nature, I love Earth. I honor her and I honor all of these changes she goes through because I think they're beautiful. It's amazing to pay attention to. If you wanted to honor that, best thing you can do is you can pay attention, obviously, to the cycles around in your area. Know the months, know the days of the Sabbaths, and then plan that for your month. Use those plannings to know this is maybe a good month for me to play and around with this thing, or take this as my main word or theme of this month. You could set up an altar that has some of these things and by altar it can just be a shelf. And by altars, it's usually a stand of something that is like the core essence of your home. It's something that feels like an energy, refugee kind of center. And so when you set up something in your home, which each 6 weeks you're changing it for a Sabbath, and you're putting different things on there and you're honoring the earth, that means in your home you have a living, breathing entity part of you that is honoring the seasonal changes around you. And all it does is it reminds you that that's the season you're in, and that this is the energy and philosophy and theme or metaphor of what you're going through and what Earth is going through at this time. And so natural themes around this are going to come up for you. And so setting up an altar is a way to honor it, because you can see it, you can play around with it, you can interact with it, it can always be with you. And so it kind of quietly always helps you remember. But also, if you're somebody that has trouble staying on top of things, it can keep you kind of like on track. And so like the months aren't just getting away from you because you have to consciously pay attention to these different points that you come to and how it shifts. And so it kind of stays you on top of those next level of goals or next level of actions, because it's the next process, it's the next step, it's the next Sabbath or event that's coming up. And so it's a natural form of movement for you eventually, the longer you play into it. And so another thing you can do on the Sabbath is feasts. Feasts are a big thing. It's really big for nourishing your body, and honoring earth is like the abundance and bringing that into yourself. And so eating food of that time. So usually these feasts are usually around food or sources, like any kind of herbs, smells, animals, foods, they are all the best usually for around that time. There's a reason they're eaten or enjoyed at the feast kind of thing. And so, yeah, another one is to use smells or incense. You can use different sounds from music for different emotions. You can do sit outside for 10 minutes at least and just observe. Looking at the basic, even the sun's location is a basic one for if you just want to honor the changing of the year and not so much Sabbath. It's just like neat to see where the sun rises every day of the year because it's different. And to pay attention to that, because then you're honoring how the earth is moving slowly no matter what, right? And so dancing and movement to ground through the energy is always going to be a big one. It's always going to be what I'm going to suggest to do, because dancing taps into all of our energy frequencies in our entire body. And so in order to elevate and to ground into the new energies that are coming with each cycle of Earth's natural energy, for us to align with it, the best thing we can do is open up to it. And one of the ways we do that is dancing, or just even through stretching and movement. Opening up and really connecting with the body is a huge way, because Earth is a physical realm, right? And so we need to do something physical with our body to help ground ourselves into the energy that Earth is changing with at that time. And so anyway, how to honor your own cycles. So if you wanted to use this now to test your own self and to use these cycles to help your own self-development and own self-awareness, these are the tools that you would use for you personally, for those personal cycles, okay? And so there's something called the internal weather report. So this is where you can do this either daily or weekly, however long you see fit, and just see, what cycle do I feel like I'm in right now? You know, what cycle or what season do I feel like I'm in when I wake up? And when I plan my day, what season do I feel the most like? Because if you're like me, or a woman, and by like me, I mean, if you have ADHD or depression and anxiety on a day-to-day basis, you have to know where you're okay and then set up your day for what you feel like is best going to suit you. Like, sometimes you're not going to be the best to do an overly active day because you have so much going on. So you want to wait, right? You want to do those on another day. And sometimes, like if you're a woman, by that one, I mean, if you have your period or something like that, sometimes, oh, well, guess what? This is where I'm at for my energy of this day. And this is what I feel like. So maybe it's not the best day for this task, right? And so an internal weather report is just like, how am I feeling? What am I up to? What are the best conditions? Like if it's going to rain, where's my umbrella? And that's the same thing for us. If it's going to be cold, how do I cover myself up so I'm warm? If it's going to be hot, how can I keep myself cool today? And these are all just ways that you can check how you're feeling, what season you might be in, and then plan your day accordingly so that you can use it optimally without having a level of shame or guilt or force or pressure on yourself, because you already took a or a test to know where you feel so that you're not overwhelming yourself for the energy you feel that day, right? Another thing you do is a seasonal journal. So this is where you can track a lot of stuff. If you're somebody who likes to track stuff, I, in the beginning, tried to do some of these things. I'm not somebody that likes to keep track of everything like this because I write a lot when I write. Alarm just going off. So for me, I'm not telling people that this is best for you, but sometimes in the beginning, while you're getting to know yourself, tracking can be one of the best things that you can do, because then you can actually see how you naturally are in these phases or cycles, right? And so track your own seasons versus the calendar year, and moods and emotions, themes linked to things. So in the future, you can easily identify what season you're in and compare for like a winter and depression. So if you get to know yourself and you know that you normally, like for me, it is normal for me to feel slightly depressed in between maybe like February and March, or January and February, because that is when the strongest winter phase is happening here, and when I might not be getting the most sun or outside as much because the driving conditions are terrible. And so it is normal for me to feel that way. And so I might normally feel seasonal depression as a collective because that's what season we're in, but I might just feel it as a personal one because I'm also in my own one, because I'm being more internal at that stage. I'm caring more about what's going on inside. And so when I'm in that, then I know naturally that's a time for me to prepare to feel that way. So how can I prepare to feel better at that time? And that's, oh, well, ensure I'm getting out a lot before or after that happens, right? Ensure I'm sticking to eating right. Ensure I'm sticking to doing all my activities that I like when I'm indoors. So even though I'm indoors, I don't feel sad about it as much as I would be if I felt like I have nothing to do in here, right? And so the next one is do different activities most aligned to your cycle, which is kind of like the weather report, right? What that's getting at is once you know you're in that cycle, now we do stuff that is according to that rather than forcing something that's not, like the jumping in the river in the winter versus the summer. Okay. Personal year ending. So when you feel your own cycle, your wheel of the year ending, so this is when you feel like you are definitely about to enter a winter phase, right? Because the fall is technically right before the winter, and that's when the wheel resets. So this is a good time to do a goodbye ritual, to say goodbye to what you feel like is dying or leaving you. And so it's kind of like a funeral for your old self. You can even just walk through a doorway, because doorways actually are very potent for liminal spaces, and so they help you. You can transition and portal jump and create alternate realities really quickly by just having an intention and walking through a doorway within. So if you walk through a doorway envisioning leaving behind the darkness or only carrying wisdom into your next season, then when you get on the other side of the door, all of a sudden now you're in the season of your spring, right? So that's a good way to just quickly update it if you just want to. That's not always going to do it, though, just so you know. Like I said, you cannot prevent yourself from dealing with a winter. But if you've already dealt with a winter and say you want to shift immediately because you feel like it's time to move on, that's a quick way to be like, okay, I've done the work and now I've declared it's done. But honoring your own cycle, give yourself grace and have patience. There's a lot of learning that comes with this and understanding, and you're not going to understand all of it at the beginning. And so it's worth taking your time and giving grace for. But the last one is to understand yourself in the seasons, as education is the highest form of honoring yourself and the seasons. So really even just watching this video, taking time to learn about the Sabbath, taking time to learn how this even came to be. And like, there's a few things talk about growing cycles and math equations to do with that and how that's important for us and how we grow. And so it is important to honor our growing cycles. And I think the more we can understand ourselves as complex plants, and honor that we have our own natural growing cycles like the earth does, the more that we can work with them and the better we are prepared to deal with when they are not in the warm, friendly seasons, right? So as we move on to the final close here, because I'm about done, it's amazing that how we can see the earth and its seasons are related to us and our own, and why it matters for our health and the most optimal evolution forward. It's pretty neat to me to think of it that way, because instead of being these stagnant creatures that are like robotic and don't, have anything to do with nature, we see that we really do rove alongside of it, even in our own cycles. Like if you were to go back and watch my moon cycle video, we rove with the moon. So we are very complex individuals, because at all times we are not just roving with ourselves and earth or the moon. We're roving with all the planets and all the stars and all the different equations happening. There's so many different parts, and that's why it can be overwhelming. So when we just focus on a few of these, that's why even one core thing that I talk about in these videos, like, you don't have to do all of them components because it can be overwhelming, but knowing a few of them can do wonders, because even if you just understand your own cycle, right, or understand your own moon cycle, or understand your own growth cycle, or if you understand your own like numerology kind of level, or if you understand a lot of these things, it can help you put a piece of the puzzle so that you work together with it quite easily versus working against yourself because you're oblivious to facts, right? And so it's neat because for me, forcing yourself when it's winter, or in general for us personally, it only hurts us. Like, to me, the longer I'm in anything to do with mental health or anything like that, the more that people act like winter is like no big deal, the more I can understand why we're having such a hard time with burnout and why people are not doing well, because we're not meant to bulldoze through winter season, like, at all, even in like the real context, let alone our own personal one. And life doesn't give people, oh, I have a personal winter season, so I have to like tap out of life until I hit summer. or spring. Like there is no button that vetoes you out of life like that. And so it's about being able to work with it better. But if you honor it, then it is a way that it becomes your friend. And it's kind of beautiful, because rather than forcing, then you're really becoming in partnership with it. And that is a better way to be when you're dealing with pretty much anything to do with self-development. Force, shame, control is never really the answer. The more that you can naturally get your body to want to be in those states and to gravitate towards it in like a magnetizing kind of way, and it just being like what it feels best for and it aligned, the more chances that's going to be a long-term change for you, but also like a good soulful feel change. Like you don't want a long-term change that feels like crap anyways. Like you want it to feel good. So why listening to what's going on in and around us can also inspire, help, and motivate and prime us. Like a lot of the time, like if you don't pay attention to these, then you're not utilizing the energy that's happening around you or inside of you. And so when you actually do listen and learn and pay attention to this, it can be something that is like inspiring to you. It can be something that helps you get on track. It can be something that keeps you on track. It can also be something that illuminates something that you never really thought before, and then changes your whole life completely. Like for me, especially with depression, this did change my life, because now when I am in one of my winter zones, it's not like that I actually have to die or feel like that harsh on myself, because that's never actually the answer. The answer is, what do I need to let go of now? Because I am going to change no matter what that looks like. So the last thing I have here is, if someone who struggles with something with their own cycles, this is comforting to lean on, as then you can know your feelings, trials, tribulations, they can only last so long, that every season must end for the next. And the more we embrace what is and letting go of what isn't, the sooner we can and do advance sooner towards the seasons we want for longer, and utilizing them only will prepare us to have better harvests in the future. So in the long run, one of the reasons that I felt like this is the most important to go over was because I wanted people to be able to utilize their own cycles the most, but also to know that the power of the energy of the year that we're in is incredibly powerful to help amplify your intentions. So if you are in line with the earth and in line with your personal cycle, that is double energy already behind you. And so you want to make sure that you are thinking in alignment with what you want to create, because you're already on this like highway to manifesting. And so if you're thinking about only things you don't want to, you're putting all the energy into the life that you don't want. You are creating it with really quick intensity, because you are aligned. So we want to just make sure you're aligned for the stuff you do want. And we want to make sure that you're aligned also in doing stuff in a way that actually is beneficial for you, so that you are happy with it in the long run, versus feeling like you have no option and stuck into doing what's best for outside entities. And so this is something that is really close to my heart because of the harder, deeper emotion aspect to it. And it is something that I, for a long time, had a really hard time with. And people around me, it's been an interesting experience, because there's not really anybody I know that has not dealt with depression or anxiety. It's just we deal with it on different levels. And there's not anybody I know that it is not, if you are depressed or anxious, that it is not something that changes. Like, this is not a forever state. It will change for you. And so I don't want anybody to think that you're tied to what it feels like right now, because it is just a moment in time. And there is a potential that the greater use you make of it, the greater change you'll have in the future, so that potentially you won't ever have to handle it that way again in the future. It won't ever bring you to that level again. But one of my favorite parts, and I'll get into in shadow work, is sometimes the darker the shadow that you hold is a big point of how much light you can hold. So if you are dealing with real darkness, there is a really big, beautiful omen in that. And that is that you were powerful enough to deal with that. That's why you're given that. And that means some big light is coming through that, because you're going to be able to hold that darkness, which means whatever you can hold of darkness, then you're equally able to hold of light. And we can't get to that light through without the darkness. And so honoring your cycles, honoring the phases and the seasons of the year, but for also your own personal, they're always going to help you to get there a lot quicker, and in a way that feels aligned versus forced, which is ultimately what we want in life, is authentic, alignment with what feels best. And so I hope this video, some people can use it and understand some of its importance, and hopefully it can comfort some people in the way that it comforted me. But if you have any of your own points or any thoughts, feel free to comment or reach out to me. I definitely love to hear other people's feedback on this kind of stuff, just because it is something that is my own philosophy of applying it to people. And it's neat to hear when others can relate to it in their own way, that especially towards mental health, because right now it is one of the things that I care about the most with helping people, because I want us to make a utopia, and in utopia we have healthy minds. Right? We have healthy hearts, we have healthy souls, and part of that all stems from being able to build up this mind now in understanding who we truly are and not the machines that they've tried to make us be. So anyways, much love until next time. Have a good day. Bye.